Thanks for coming today. Just quick introductions. My name's Paul Andersen. This is my lovely wife, Laura Andersen. She's hiding behind the corner. Yeah, they're clapping for your beauty. They find you lovely as well. Laura and I think it's 32 years of marriage, and the last 5 years she worked at Mechanical and Industrial Engineering Department as an academic advisor at Montana State. She also did all the work that I've done on Bozeman Science, like back end, but 5 years ago she was able to quit that job and start traveling with me, and it's been a wonderful life upgrade. Just getting to see new places. Our son lives in San Antonio. And so after today, we'll jet down there, and we want to go see the eclipse. So we're super excited about that. I'm sure a lot of you are excited as well. My background, I was a teacher for 20 years in Montana. So I started in middle and high school and then moved to high school. And then I've been a consultant for the last 10 years around the next generation science standards. When I stepped out of the classroom, one of the first places I came was in Texas. And I went to a school called Plano. And it's in Dallas, and they said, you can come work with our teachers, but you can't say the NGSS word. Because in Texas, we have the TEKS, and we don't have any nationalized curriculum. We have our curriculum. And so you could come talk about science and teaching, but you can't talk about that. And so I find it a little ironic that I'm now like highly demanded here. Because 10 years later, you've adopted a set of standards that are built on the same framework as the NGSS. So it's the K-12 science framework. And so it's three-dimensional. You've made it Texas by like changing the name of the cross-cutting concepts are now the recurring themes and concepts, even though they're the same. But I think what makes it nice is really those first 5 years with NGSS were hard because they were obtuse. The documents are confusing, and it was hard to figure it out. And we've learned a lot over the last 10 years. And so what I hope to give today is a little bit of that learning and more big picture of what is science like, what is engineering like, and how has it changed, and how it's going to change kind of going into the future. So that's the title of the talk. It's on the wonder of science. And if I go back for a second, when Laura and I were trying, has anybody been to the Wonder of Science as a website? All right, so I hope I can pimp my website a little bit today so you can start using it a little bit more. The Wonder of Science, we put together about 6 years ago when we were doing this work, and we started making resources that teachers found like helpful. What's an example? Today, I'm going to show you mini lessons on how to teach the RTC and the SEP explicitly. And there'll be videos on all of those on the Wonder of Science that you can watch, or your teachers can watch, or your students can watch. Another thing that I spent 3 years doing is I wrote performance assessments for every NGSS standard from kindergarten to grade 12. So there's about 200 performance assessments that I've written. They're not perfect, but they're pretty good, and they're three-dimensional. And so that's another thing that you could use. And then another thing on NGSS, or the Wonder of Science, is everything's free and Creative Commons, and so you can use anything you want. So there are some cards on the table that are in a little pouch. I've got a poster that I'm going to reference a bunch today. All those assessments, everything is free to use. But when we were coming up with a logo, we wanted something that really got at what I think is the most important part of science, which is the wonder. And so we came up with the light bulb, and I don't even know if kids know that a light bulb looks kind of like this anymore. But we wanted it to represent like what you're doing when you're doing science. It represents the idea. But if you're really going to teach through inquiry, and you're really going to teach through phenomena-based teaching, for me it's a three-step process. And we'll do this together as a team. We'll go through it today. But the first thing you should always do is when you see a new phenomena, the first thing you should always do is you should wonder. You should ask questions, and those questions will guide what you're going to do next. And so the W stands for just wondering at the beginning. If you don't know where to start with the new TEKS, show the students a phenomena and just give them a chance to wonder. Ask their questions, and I'll model how I do that in the classroom. The next thing you should do is you should have the students develop a model. A model is the best idea in your brain, outside your brain, so other people can see it. And when you get your pouches today, the most important piece of technology you got today is a whiteboard. This is the most important piece of technology in classrooms right now. It's not a gadget, but it's a white space where kids can take their best thinking and put it on a whiteboard. For me, that piece of technology has been transformative. It's super important that it's something that you can write on and just wipe away. Kids will go way quick to a model on that, but not on paper, because they don't want to make a mistake. And so as you get started, what you want to have the kids doing is give them a chance to wonder and then model. And then the next thing we do, oh, what's a model? A model is just an explanation of what you think. So first we wonder, then we model, and then the next thing we do is we look at evidence. And as we look at evidence that we've maybe gathered through an investigation, then we make claims with evidence and reasoning to see if our model is right or wrong. And so inquiry and looking at science this way is really simple, but trust me, it's taken me 10 years to get to the point where it seems simple. In these first years, it will be confusing. And what you need to learn as quickly as you can is the new jargon. Because for the next 100 years, if you teach science in Texas, you're going to do these 3 different dimensions. It's going to be what are we learning, what are we doing, those are called the practices, and how are we thinking, those are called the RTCs. So as quickly as you can learn those, it'll help you support teachers or as a teacher yourself. Today, though, I wanted to talk about the science of wonder. So the wonder of science is important, but I want to tell you that the reason we're doing this is that it's based in so much research on how kids learn. So like, why are we doing this? Kids will learn more this way. Kids will have more fun this way. And you'll invite more kids to the table by teaching this way. If you just front load content, you just create more science and engineering teachers. Just people like us, because we're nerds. Like we wear Eclipse t-shirts, right, Anna? Yeah. Yeah. But like we want to see people who saw themselves as an artist or saw themselves as a musician, seeing that they have aptitude in the sciences and that they could kind of come to the table. And so that's what I'm going to kind of walk through today. Since I'm in Texas, I always try to be Texas. And so when I'm in Texas, I always try to find phenomena that are important and local. So the first phenomena that I think is appropriate for this time of the year would be the flowers. Your state flower is what? Bluebonnet. I don't know if you knew this, but you actually have 5 state flowers. You don't have 1 state flower, you have 5 state flowers, unlike any other state. Now, some of you want to like explain this to the person next to you and just tell them why. But if you do that, you'll just kill their wonder. Like, if you think your job is to just tell people the answers, you're just teaching in the wrong century. That was the last century. So if I just let that sit for a second, the bluebonnet is your state flower, but you have 5 of them. Like, I'm adding curiosity and I'm adding wonder. Another thing that's important in Texas is that you have a governor. It's not the governor you have right now, but you had a governor that became a tree. And that's a weird story, too. So there once was a governor in Texas that became a tree, and that tree spread across Texas. So the fact that you don't know what I'm talking about, it breeds wonder in your brain. And also, you have this bird that ironically is called the northern mockingbird, even though you wouldn't see yourselves as a northern state, I don't think. And so the mockingbird, and Laura and I went for a walk right before we walked in here, and there's a mockingbird right outside this place just singing away. And if you've ever just stopped to listen to a mockingbird, you can see why you chose it as your state bird. It was kind of like it didn't want me to like scare it off. It was kind of bold. But this is not what's interesting about the mockingbird. If you watch a mockingbird ever, not on a pole, but when they're on the grass, they'll have this weird behavior. And it requires you to watch. It requires you to like take time away from your busy day to go and watch a mockingbird for a bit. But if you ever watch a mockingbird in the grass, it'll always do this weird pattern. I don't know if you're picking up on that. It will do like da 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 da, like da 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 da, like that. And it'll just continue to do that over and over and over again and then move. And so what we call all of these things so far, the bluebonnet, we call the governor who turned into a tree, what we call it is a phenomena. And And so what is a phenomena? A phenomena is something in the real world that we don't understand. And we understand that through a process called inquiry. And as we start to understand that, then we start to learn the science. And so the way that we're changing the way we teach science is we used to explain all the science that you're going to learn at the beginning, and then you do a little lab or an activity at the end. And when you do it that way, your class is boring because you're just like lecturing on all the content they need to do, or you're doing an elementary anchor chart. You got to learn all these parts of the water cycle. And the kids are not really scientists. They're just like learning what you were telling them. And then you do a lab at the end, but we all know the labs that we did, a lot of us in high school or university, they're not a lab. It's just a cookbook where you follow step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3. I remember in chemistry, we'd always kind of fudge our results so we'd have low error, so we'd get like a good grade. And so like that is not science. Now, even though I'm talking about how science is changing, a bunch of you are not paying attention because you're still watching The Mockingbird and doing that. And the fact that I'm not telling you why they do that, it kind of makes you wonder still. And it's okay if you sit with that wonder a little bit. Some of you think maybe they're doing it to feed. Some of you think maybe they're doing it to scare away predators. Some of you think they're doing it to communicate. Some of you think maybe they're doing it like as a mating ritual. Some of you might even be thinking that they're doing it to thermoregulate when it gets hot or cold. But you all have a mental model in your brain. And the cool thing about The Mockingbird is the scientists don't know why they do it yet. Like there's no consensus in the literature on why they do this. They think they're probably scaring insects that they can catch. They also think it goes back to like some thermoregulation. And then they also think it's a way to like communicate. I don't know if you're hearing that bird in the background, but there's like another blue jay, I think, in the background. So it's a way to communicate to other birds, kind of what they're doing. And so the fact that I have kind of told you there's no answer to this, and then I threw out that bluebonnet thing and the governor thing, and I'm not going to tell you the answer to those, it's like that's how we teach now. It's a different way of teaching. And so I want to do just a few acknowledgments, because everything I'm about to show you doesn't come from me. It comes from like hard works over the last 60, 70 years. And so the first person that I would talk about is somebody named Lillian McDermott. She taught me when I got my master's how to do inquiry. And she really was the first person to talk about teaching through directed inquiry. The next person is David Hestenes. He came up with this idea of modeling and having kids model on whiteboards. That inspired NGSS, which now has inspired the TEKS. And so his work at Arizona State was super important. Helen Quinn led the NGSS, but she's also a particle physicist at Stanford. And if it weren't for her, we wouldn't even be talking about three-dimensional learning. If you've ever heard of CER, claim evidence reasoning, then you have to lend that to Krycek and McNeil, who came up with that as a thinking framework. If you've ever heard of storylines, which you'll do, I heard that like OpenSciEd is one that you might be using, or other storylines. Then you have to give that to Brian Reiser. You have to use Osborne and Patterson and their understanding of what argumentation really is. Or if you've done argument-driven inquiry, I don't know if anybody's done ADI here, the work of Victor Sampson is super important. And so this is a few of the many scientists who studied education and how to teach science. And so we keep getting better and better and better over time. But for me, I'm a nerd, so I wanted to show you where it all began. And really, it all began with this person. His name is Jerome Bruner. If you're not familiar with Jerome Bruner, he's one of the biggest cognitive psychologists we have in the States. If you ever learned just about like how students learn and how they go through different stages, if you've ever used the word scaffolding, if you've ever talked about vertical curriculum, it all came from this person who was not an educator. But post-Sputnik, America was really scared of us falling behind, and so we put our greatest minds to it. And this is Jerome Bruner in a class with somebody named David Hawkins, another really brilliant person. But what he's describing is what our classes should look like, and this is like 60 years ago. And it's what a good TEKS classroom should look like.
Their curiosity is exercised. They are looking for the answers to things, and when they find it, that's their reward. They don't need gold stars or approbation. They should get these in some sort of a long-run thing. They also sense, as they move along, an increase in their own competence. And this is pretty heady. that this is what keeps one moving. This is one of the basic ways in which you have to fight what I want to call the sort of middle dropout, the kid who drops out of sheer boredom because he's never had a decent intellectual experience in a classroom. And they're getting an intellectual experience. I think that the important thing to bear in mind here is not only that they're learning some physics, and I'm not going to go into that, but that the kind of learning that they're doing now is of a kind that they can use, that they're getting it in a way that'll stick to their bones, if you will. They're taking observations, they're introducing to the observations some way of regularizing them, groping for their own way of stating the lawfulness of phenomena that they observe. We're trying to give them some sense of physics such that they can become their own physicists rather than being mere spectators. And this is what the nature of the learning is that's taking place. The great simplifications tend to be quite abstract. Getting some sense of the simplicities of nature, some of these grand simplicities, is precisely something that takes a while. And indeed, if anything is worth taking a while at, it is this. You cannot give them this sense of the simplicity of phenomena simply by saying how it goes. You've got to let them go through these exercises.
And I would do that same lesson today. It's called a double or a coupled pendulum. I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but you have two pendulums that are connected, and one will move and the other one will stop, and then this one will stop and this one will oscillate. And you can hear him using like phenomena. This is an incredible course where I think these were fifth graders went through, and by the end, they really had an understanding of a lot of the rules of physics. But a lot of time we talk about phenomena like it's a new term, or we make fun of the word like it's that Sesame Street song, phenomena. But it is like, it's been here the whole time. And I really think, I'm going to stand on a soapbox for a second. Like, we did know what good education was in the 60s, 70s. And then what happened is we were worried about our economy falling behind. We were worried about testing. And we've kind of got into this regime, I really think, over the last 15 years where it's all about, let's get those reading and math scores up. And elementaries just revolve around the test scores. And we just went through a pandemic where we had to get along and we had to understand science. And we were cutting out science and social studies because we had to get our scores up in reading and math. And it's just, I don't know, it makes me really sad because I'm like, how are we ready for the next one? And we want to create kids that really can think this way. So I wanted to kind of take you on a journey of like how it's changed just because I've been in this for 30 years. And I wanted to show you a picture of myself before my first day of teaching. This is in 1994. Laura took this picture of me in my classroom. I was so excited because I had my own classroom and I had my own periodic table and I had my own chalkboard. And this, for the young ones, that's called a grade book. And then you also have another thing called a planning book, and you just held tight. Because that planning book had what you're going to do in every moment of the day. And also you had to have that grade book as well, and you could never lose that. What was the hardest part about teaching back then? You didn't have people to collaborate with. For me, I was the only science teacher in a rural school, and I just survived that fall. But when I went to the teachers conference, it was just like today. It was just like, oh, my people. Like, finally, I can talk to other people about what the struggles are and what's changing. This is before the internet as well. So whenever I wanted to learn something new, I would go to the library, and I had to learn it there or at a bookstore and learn it there. That was huge, what the internet did to my teaching, but that is not as big as the shift towards phenomena-based teaching. In my 30 years, my pedagogy changed some with the internet and what happened, but it changed more with this three-dimensional phenomena-based teaching. In my 30 years of teaching, that's been the biggest shift. So if you are a high school teacher or you work with those who say it's really not that different, then you're deluding yourself. Like, this is a fundamental change in the way that we're teaching science. And it'll take us a while to get used to it, but it's really, really good for kids. So I wanted to think about what has changed. The biggest thing is we now have brain research on how kids learn and what's the best way to learn. And we've learned that they have to construct knowledge over time. I'll also share a website at the end with my slides, so if you want any of this, like, I'll eventually put it there. The internet was big so we could communicate with each other. Engineering gives purpose to science. One thing that I think we get wrong about engineering, this is something my wife taught me, is engineering is not making. Like, if you're just doing CAD and building robots and making stuff, you're not an engineer. Like, what is an engineer? An engineer is someone who uses science to solve human problems. And one thing that we'll do is if we just think that engineering is making, those kids will go to university and they'll become mechanical engineers, and then they'll look at their schedule and it'll be all this physics and math. And they'll be like, why do I have to take all of this? I just want to do CAD and I want to make a robot. And so we want to really tell them what engineering is. It's the application of science to solve human problems. It doesn't mean that it has to be super rigorous. We can do it, but we should always give them an accurate measure of what it is. I really feel like artificial intelligence right now is as big as the internet is was when it came out. If you're younger, you don't remember the internet coming out, but what happened is we banned it everywhere. We locked it down and said kids are going to use it, they're going to get damaged, and then slowly it became a part of everything we do, to the point where the internet goes down in the school and we're like, what do we do? Like, nothing works anymore. And I really feel like AI is that. We also realize that we're really impacting the Earth. And as we impact the Earth, that's having huge ramifications on humans. What else has changed? The K-12 science framework that the TEKS is based on. Never try to read like the NGSS or the TEKS. It's so dense, it makes no sense. But read that K-12 science framework. It's free. You can download it as a PDF. But it's what all of this is based on, and it's written in a language that you could just read. And then the last thing is we're trying to put students at the center of our learning. And so every time we teach, it should not be about you, the teacher. It should be the student at the center of the learning, and what are they learning. And so I think these things have changed during my career. But I wanted to think today about what like really big things have changed. And so to tell that story, it can't just be about me. I have to kind of stretch it out a little bit longer. And so I want to show you a picture of my daughter. This is Hannah. She's a 4th grade teacher now in Arizona. I got to co-teach with her, and it's the most fun teaching ever. Like, imagine that, getting to teach with your kid. This is my father, Lyle Andersen, and he was a math educator. And he was really into Logo and Seymour Papert and worked with the MIT crew. And so when I was really young, I went to workshops like this all the time. And I would help him set up the, they were called Commodore 64s, which were the computers we used back in the day. And then this is my grandma, Mildred, and she was a single room teacher in Montana, like in rural Montana. And so what I wanted to do is take the scale, that's one of the big RTCs, scale, and just kind of pull back as the time scale and see like how has it really changed over this time to bring us to this day. Because I think it's important to value the past to really understand where we're going. And I even wanted to take it one step back, and this is Chucky D or Charles Darwin. So this is one of my big heroes. Yeah. So Charles Darwin, he wrote and wrote and wrote, but he rarely ever drew models of what he was thinking. But he did draw one model. And you'll see it on biologists. They tend to get it as a tattoo. You'll see it on their arms a lot. But let me show you what it was. So this is what it looked like. So it was a branching tree. And so on the branching tree, he would show it branch and branch and branch, and each of those branches represented like a different tree of life. And so his big bold thing was that all life came from this one common like stem. He also then said, well, B is more related to C and less related to A. But that's not why I'm showing you this. Why I'm showing you this is he wrote I think next to it. So he just drew this and wrote I think. And what is that? That's what he thinks. That's his explanation, and that's his model. And so a model is just the best idea you have in your head. And we want kids to get their best ideas out as well. Now, this has been well tested over time and has become like essentially accepted in biology. But I wanted to show you an example of an experiment that literally shows this. I don't know if anybody's seen the mega plate before, but it's a really cool experiment they did at Harvard. And what they wanted to do was look at antibiotic resistance. So they made a monster like mega plate. So it's a huge Petri dish. It was like 2 feet. Oops, let me go back a second. It's like 2 feet on one side by like 10 feet on the other side. And what they put was on the field goal, on the 2 end zones, they put no antibiotic. And then they put like a certain amount of antibiotic where it's 1, and then they just took it times 10, times 10, times 10. And so you essentially what you have is the sides are where the bacteria can grow. And so when you introduce bacteria on the sides, and this is time lapse, it takes a little bit, but you can see the bacteria will like cover the end zones. And then they can't go any farther because there's an antibiotic. But then an idea shows up, a mutation we call that. And then what happens is they're able to live there, which leads to more mutations, which leads to more mutations, which leads to more mutations. And so what you get as you watch it is at the center, these bacteria that are immune to like thousands of times of the amount of antibiotics. This is why you always take all your antibiotics. And if you don't, like, it makes it hard for all of us. But I'm using this just as a metaphor. It's a metaphor to like how education changes and what are the big changes, and then how do you react to those big changes. And so as we think about education, think of it as teaching. And then on the right side, what I did is I put like my family members, and you could probably pick up on this, we're Scandinavian, so I put these like reindeer farmers way at the bottom. I never met them, but we'll assume that that's what my ancestors look like. So each time we see change in education, it doesn't just slowly change. There's something that happens. And so education back in the day, what was education? Nobody went to school. Who went to school? Just the rich people who could afford to go to Oxford or Harvard. Like, those are the only people who went to school. And then what happened is we had something called the Industrial Revolution, where we have jobs where you can't just not go to school. You have to have a certain amount of education. And so what did we get after that? We had mass education. And my grandma was a part of that. Like, we spread teachers as far as you could because we got to get people who understand. They can read, they can write, they can work in a factory. Like, it changed. It was great, because now we have way more people being exposed to education. What makes it hard is we have to cover all those classrooms with people. So we got to get a bunch of teachers. What is the next big thing that happened was Sputnik. Sputnik, if you're not familiar with it, it was a satellite that the Russians put up, and it scared us all because we were falling behind and we're getting lazy. And so what did that lead? If you talk to any teacher who taught back then, if you were a science or engineering teacher, it was like the land of milk and honey. They had these Eisenhower funds, and they could do anything they wanted, and money never ran out. And it was just like, that's where almost all of the content, the science and the engineering content came from. You had these working groups. One would be the BSCS, but you had physics, chemistry, you had engineering working groups, and what they did is they made the textbooks that we have now. A bunch of teachers still hold on to those with like, rip it out of my hands, because they think that science is all about what's in their chemistry book. But that's where all the content came. I remember my dad just talking about his career. It's like, I got a master's, and then I got a free PhD, and it all happened because he's a white male, and there was so much money that was going into that point. If we look at the next one, I would argue the internet was the next big disruptor. The internet, if you weren't around back then, allowed us to just have any content at our fingertips. If you want the content, you just take your phone out, and the content's right there. And so having to memorize all of this material and put it in your head is really a waste of time. And so what grew out of the internet, I would argue the SEPs grew out of that, the science and engineering practices. So once our class wasn't just like shoveling in the content, now let's really build our classroom so we're learning what a scientist does and what an engineer does. And so those science and engineering practices really grew out of that. And now where are we at? I would argue artificial intelligence is going to change a lot of things as well. It does better at argumentation, claim evidence reasoning than almost any teacher I've met. Like, if I say, could you give me a claim with evidence and reasoning on this phenomena? They do better than most teachers I know. So we should leverage that. We could get better at CER by asking ChatGPT like how to help us with our reasoning. But I think towards the future, what's the future? The future is more about how do we think. And for me, the future is more about the recurring themes and concepts. So what's going to be the future? It's about how I can think about cause and effect, how I can think in systems. And why do I think that's the future? Because it's in our mind. It's system thinking. And it's really going to be hard to automate the human mind. Like what is going on inside there. Also, mindsets and things like that, I think, will be the future. Now, the thing that makes education hard is each time you add something new, you don't dump the stuff below it. So everybody should have an education. There's a super important amount of science and engineering content that we have to have. We also have to have the practices, and we also have to have these thinking skills. So the reason teachers are stressed is we're layering on more things that we're expected to do. What do? You have to lose some of the stuff below. This is my greatest fear about the TEKS. With the NGSS, when it came out, they reduced the amount of content in the science down to about 30% of what it was before they had the NGSS. What did the TEKS do? They kept the content and they added 2 more layers. They added the SEP and they added the RTC. So I don't want your state to get overwhelmed. Like you won't be able to do all of those dimensions perfectly just because you still have a lot of content that they'll be accountable for, but it's a fear kind of that I have here. As we think about the future, if really you're not a science teacher, let me show you how it's changed with using another just analogy. So the way we used to teach science was this. We would just memorize the parts of a plant. Just memorize the parts of the plant, and the kids would regurgitate it. I still see this in classrooms. Kids don't get to use the microscope until they pass a microscope test where they have to identify all the parts of the microscope. It just is weird. I don't get it. Like, let them use the microscope. Then they'll fall in love with science. But if you memorize the parts, then you'll drive them away from science. But anyway, so we don't do that anymore. If you know teachers who front load content or just like make them memorize things, they're in the last century. So what do we do now? We just show them an authentic phenomena. You show them a plant that can grow in a glass even though it's not connected to the environment. And that plant can grow in that glass for years. 50 years the plant could live inside it. And so what you say is, that's cool. How do you think that works? And then you have the students ask questions, develop models, you do some experiments. And so then they start to understand the science just by unlocking the phenomena. We always explore before we explain. And I'll model that in just a minute or two. The thing that the future is, though, is the RTCs. This is one thing we found with the NGSS, is the NGSS came out, everybody fell in love with the SEPs, the science and engineering practices. You saw modeling in classrooms, and for some reason, the one they fell in love with is claim evidence reasoning. Like, it's the one that you see everywhere, and it's also the one that will kind of drive kids away from what you're doing, because it's way at the end of inquiry. Like, if you're really going to start with wondering and modeling. But I think everybody's kind of there. Let's get these practices right, but I think the future will really be in these thinking skills. So if you as a district or you as a teacher can focus on the green, it will help all your kids. Why will it help all your kids? If you're trying to get time in an elementary to do science and engineering, but they have to do reading, you just say, oh, when we're reading, causation is really important. Cause and effect is really important. And so we're doing mini lessons on cause and effect. Or when we're history, it's about patterns. Or as we're trying to figure out what's going on in Ukraine, it's all about the effect and what's causing that, and what's the pattern of history, and where are the resources and how they move around in the system. These are more transferable things. Also to show you this with this was my go-to back in the day when I started teaching Bill Nye. Yeah. Let me show you how not to teach. Okay? And I did this. I really did. So this is how not to teach.
Start the rubber belt turning. Electrical charges are being deposited on the metal ball. They're running through my arm and being deposited in me. And look, it's building up in my rocker wig of science. See, since these charges are all the same, they're not attracting. No, they're repelling. They're pushing apart. So they're pushing the hairs of my rocker wig apart.
So in that video, who's learning? Bill Nye is learning. Bill Nye's doing the talking, Bill Nye's doing the thinking, Bill Nye's doing the learning. And if you just expect kids to watch it and then internalize that, it just doesn't work. What he's doing is he's like using a model. So the model would be the model of the electrons in his hair. This is the next century of how to use a Bill Nye video, because I think they really are good. This is how I would use a Bill Nye now, is I would just turn the volume off. And then I would just show the phenomena. So just show the phenomena. So look, when this person puts their hand on the globe, their hair stands up on end. So what do you wonder about that? Like, what do you think about that? What do you model about that? Here's another cool phenomena. I don't know if you can see it from where you're at, but his hair stands up on end, and then when he touches the metal ball to it, he makes a weird face, and then his hair falls down. So that would be another phenomena. So what could we have the kids do? They could ask questions about this, they could develop models, and then they could come up explanations. And those are not Bill Nye's explanations, those are their explanations. So the pivot is subtle. Like, what's the difference between teaching those two ways? It's who's doing the learning. And if you're talking all the time, you're doing the learning. Like right now, who's doing the learning? Me. Because I'm talking. And that's the person who's really internalizing it. And so shifting away from that as much as we can is like what our goal is. And so I wanted to kind of front load you with some of the words and some of the content, but now I want to give you a chance to do a little bit of learning this way. If you could grab one thing out, it would be this. So there is a little whiteboard that should have come in your pouch. And I think there's also a whiteboard marker that was in there as well. If you could get that out, it'd be great. All right, this is my mantra, don't kill the wonder. If you've ever been to any presentation I've done over the last 10 years, this is a slide that's there. It's basically don't kill the wonder. So what I did is I took all this jargon of education and then put it into a little cycle. So these are all the new things that you have to learn. So you have to learn all the RTCs, you have to learn all the SEPs, but don't show that to kids. It'll freak them out. It's too much. It's just too much jargon, and they don't need to see that. Your brain can't handle more than just like 3 or 4 things. And so this is the cycle that I always use. So this is not just like a lesson, it's every lesson. So if I teach a kindergarten lesson or a physics lesson, I still follow the same model of inquiry. It doesn't matter what it is. Just the phenomena is going to change. It always starts with that. And so to show you this today and to get started, I made a tube called the Wonder Tube. So the Wonder Tube is designed to build wonder in all you all. So the Wonder Tube, if you Google Wonder Tube, I just made up the term, so you'll get to weird websites. So I would not Google Wonder Tube. But if I show you the Wonder Tube and how it works, so there is like a blue pom-pom here, and then there's a green pom-pom here, and the blue is connected to the green. So there's a connection. In science, we call this a system. A system is a group of components that all interact. So as I pull this, that goes up. As I pull this, that goes up. Now the cool thing is this one is also connected to that. So the orange one is connected to the blue, which is connected to the green, which is connected to the blue. And so a lot of you are still, I'm watching your eyes, you're still tracking me. You're like, I think I got it figured out. The cool thing is that the red one is connected to the green one here. So this one is connected to that. So there's a connection, I guess we could call this a horizontal connection. There's also a vertical connection here. And then there's also a diagonal connection, which is cool. Like that goes like that, and that goes like that. Now, the most cool thing I saw so far was Brooke, when I did that one, you went like this. I don't know if you're faking it, but that was a really good, like, wonder face. So when the kids make the wonder face, the worst thing you want to do is, like, tell them how it works. Now, a lot of you have seen something like this before, so you're still, like, arms folded, not impressive yet. But the cool thing about the Wonder Tube is there's no, like, connection between the sides. So like this side is not connected to that side. There's no clear connection between the sides, so it's weird that they are able to be connected when there doesn't seem to be anything in the middle, if that makes sense. So what we call this is a phenomena. A phenomena is something that we don't really understand, but we're going to try to figure out. And so the worst thing to do at this point, I hope you get this, the worst thing to do would be to open it up and show you how it works. Does that make sense? Like that would be a horrible teaching move. It's what most teachers do. Like they explain all the science before we get to explore. But the second worst thing to do is have a shared conversation about it. So don't do this. Don't say like, oh, does anybody have any questions in class? If you do that, it'll be the same 3 people who always ask questions. And so let me show you how to teach this way. If you could, everybody just give me a quick T-chart. So a T-chart looks like this. So a T-chart looks like this. And then could you just write an O at the top of the one on the left? So a T-chart that looks like this, and then just put an O at the top. And then what I want you to do, thanks for letting me use that. What I want you to do under there is could you just write down some observations as the video loops over and over again? Just do it quietly. Write down some observations or some noticings that you have as the video loops over and over again. You see okay or not? You can use that if you want. Yeah. So what's an observation? An observation is something you see. Don't overthink it. Just write down something that you notice. This is really good here. Look at this one. This person wrote like vertical and horizontal connections. It's really good. And also hold up exemplar work like that so the kids know what you're looking for. Don't write big sentences, but I love this. Draw. Just like Darwin. Draw little arrows, draw little things. It's way faster. Nice work, Kate. Way faster than trying to write a bunch of words. Just like draw what you notice. Don't try to explain it yet. Just write observations down. Because somebody in this room is going to pick up on something that everybody else missed. So like write an observation and then go back to the video again. And you're just looking for that one clue that'll unlock it for all of us. Teacher hack, if you right-click on a video and hit loop on YouTube, you just right-click on it and hit loop, it'll loop forever. And you don't have to keep running back to your computer to hit like play over again. You just right-click right on the video. Also, if you loop it, kids will keep watching it because they like screens. And so just like keep it rolling. Like a good scientist could write down 6 or 7 observations. Don't try to impress people with really cool observations. If you didn't write like 4 pom-poms, different colors, then you missed out on really big observations. Like don't overthink it. Bless you, and bless you. What you're really trying to do now is just look for patterns. The RTC you're using right now is patterns. What do you notice? Like, how does this related to that is related to that? What seems normal? What seems like not normal? We're just using our sense of vision at this point to figure out what's going on. If I were to point to where you are, just to signpost up here for a second, you're trying to figure out the phenomena of the wonder tube. What are you doing? What practice? You're doing something called an investigation. And then what RTC are you using? Patterns. So you're doing what's called an observational investigation to understand a phenomena. Like this is where all science begins, just watching. Just like what do you observe, what do you notice? Could you give me a Q at the top of the other column? So at the top of the other column in yours, could you just give me a Q? Q stands for questions. And so could you write like 5 questions that you have about the phenomena? What do we do? Turn all your observations into questions. So say something like, oh, I noticed that the red is connected to the blue. What would be a question is, how is it connected? So try to give me 5 questions if you can. They start with like how, what, when. For kids who struggle on this, like just tell them, go right across. Every observation becomes a question. So just like draw a line horizontal from each observation. You should have a question that goes with each of those. You're doing really good. How does it work? I hope that's on there somewhere. Who love this time? Introverts. I'm introverted, and I'm over like getting thrown into group work right away. Like, give me quiet time to just process before I have to like listen to somebody talk. Kids really love just being able to just sit quietly and observe. And that quiet space is important. And if you don't give them time to write down the questions, when you have a discussion, nobody will have questions. Because you're rushing them. You're not giving them enough time. So let me do a quick observation bit first to make sure we got everything. Anna, do you want to kick us off? Where did Anna go? What are some observations? What did you write down?
Actually, could I get the mic over to her?
Say it again.
Your hand is always on the center.
Awesome. Your hand is always at the center. Could the rest of you, if you had that, could you cross it off on your board? Thanks. Yeah. So, like, make sure you listen to what the other people say because you don't want to double up on theirs. Yeah. What else do you have?
There's no connection between the two tubes.
No connection between the two tubes. So, like, cross that off. Any other observations you had?
I don't know how to describe this. I wrote when you pull up on one, it pulls an opposite, and then it drops the matching ball.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It
like
does,
it's almost
yeah.
like
So,
an angle.
Well, what we're looking for here on this one, Anna, is let's look for the pulling up. So, like, when I pull up, it'll drop the matching ball,
Yeah.
the vertical matching ball.
Yeah.
It's really good noticing.
Yeah.
So like when I pull up on one of the ones on the top, when I let it go, it's always the one below it that falls. Is that kind of what you're noticing?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, it's really good noticing. Yeah.
That's kind of where I had a lot of questions then. And so
That
I
came
didn't
off
have-
of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mind, Brooke, giving us some questions? What do you got?
How do the connections work diagonally if there are no strings? Is there a secret opening that we don't see? Does he
Perfect.
always move it in the same pattern?
Perfect. Yeah, it always moves in the same pattern. You can go diagonally and horizontally. Your other one was not an observation, though. It was a question. What was that one? Is there a secret? What did you say?
Is there a secret opening?
Is there a secret opening on the inside? Yeah, and as you go through this, especially in lower elementary, kids will give you what they notice, what they wonder, and what they think. And so you want to make sure that you're really doing observations. Laura? Oh, I did say that. What questions do you have? I apologize profusely. This is what Laura does. She makes sure I'm not a jerk. Before we go to questions, my bad. Before we go to questions, what are some other observations that we haven't hit? What are some other observations from the video that you think might be important? Go ahead.
He tilts the tube.
Right. So there's a tilt. And where do we look for that at? It's after you put it back together, there's a tilt.
Yeah, it's like you're getting the string back in.
Perfect. So I think it's after the blue and red tug, right?
Which is another observation.
Blue, red tug, then separate, and then tilt. Right? Also, did you notice that? Like, Yeah, it unlocks for other people. So there is like a double pull, there's a separation, and then there's a tilt. Any other observations y'all notice? Yeah. It's really good, yeah. You can only, yeah. I notice you only open it when it's like both the red and the purple or the blue are in a down position, then you can open it. Yeah, what else?
Well, I had a question that if we change the pattern of the way you're pulling,
Yeah.
does it change the way those interact?
That's a good question. Yeah, in the back, did you have an observation?
There's a hitch when you're pulling it apart. There's a hitch on the blue. You pull the thread down.
Yeah, there's a little bit of like a hitch. I like the way you described that. So it's right here, right?
Yeah, right there.
It's almost like a tug. Yeah. It's really good noticing. Yeah. Any other observations?
Yes, right here.
Yeah, sorry.
I am so ADHD, so when it comes to looking at patterns,
Uh-huh.
I can never see them. I always miss them, and I have a lot of students that when we come to cycles, patterns, everything is jumbled.
Yeah.
So just doing this activity and listening to other people
It-
saying, I found this, I found that, like, I'm writing like crazy things that I
You didn't notice it.
miss.
Yeah.
And I noticed that my kids would do the same thing.
Yep. This T-chart thing always works. If you're going to do this with kids, like make sure they each get a whiteboard, you give a T-chart, write observations, share observations, then write questions. There's no lesson I don't start this way. It always works. But it's important that all those kids are quiet while we're observing, so then when we bring them together, they can learn from other people. Learning is totally social. And if you don't have other people, you'll never figure this out. I did this once in a physics class with 4 kids. It was just a small physics class, and they could never figure it out. But if I do it in a 3rd grade class with 30 kids, they'll figure it out right away. So like the numbers are super important. Now let me show you what we'll do with questions, because I could also do it at this level. So I could say like, I don't know, what questions do you have? Do you mind sharing your questions?
Is there a reset process?
Is there a reset process? That's a really good question. What's your next question? Do you have another question?
Is there some kind of mechanism on each end of the tube?
Is there a mechanism on either end of the tube? That's a really good question. Yeah. Did you have a question here? What's a question you mind sharing?
We kind of already talked about, but why did he seem to pull 2 balls at once?
Why do you have to pull 2 at once? And what's the purpose of that? That's a really good question. Did you see what I said as a teacher? Every time I read the question, I just say, that's a really good question. And I never say, like, that's a great question. It's just a poker face. Like, that's a really good question. It's important that we know why kids ask questions in class. They don't ask questions in class for an answer. It's a weird thing, because you never got mad when I didn't answer your question. Like, you just ask questions because you want to be a part of the show. It's fun to learn, and it's fun to be up here. So, like, that's why we ask questions. So what I want you to do is, at your table group, could you share your questions with each other? But I want to give you 2 charges. Number 1, don't answer their questions. It's not your job. And number 2, could you look for a question that somebody asked that you didn't ask that you think's a good one? So talk at your table. And if you have to join another table, if you only got one, make it happen. Cool. Teachers, if I could grab your brains. Thank you. I know you did something at your table. I was at a table with Leah, Jody, and I forgot the other name. Thank you. I liked your question about like your question was like, why do you have to pull so hard? On the blue one. Is that what you were wondering? Another one I heard was like, I think Jody, you were like, are there magnets or something involved in it? And then I think you were asking, does your hand placement matter? Is that what you're saying? Like, the reason I keep shifting back and forth between the pink, is there something like there that's important? Does anybody have a question that they didn't ask but someone else asked in their group that they thought was a good question? Yeah.
Is this, okay, this reminds me really similarly to really old camp games where you're like through the green glass door and you have to, you know, you tell your kids, okay, grass can go through the green glass door, but a bear cannot.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's like that. Is that what you're thinking? Yeah, was that your question or was that somebody else's question?
Mine. It was an observation I had made.
I gotcha. I like it. Does anybody have a question that someone else in their group asked that they didn't ask? You didn't ask, but it was a good one. Yeah. Uh-huh.
We asked, like, is airflow, suction involved?
I love that. Somebody wondered if airflow or suction is involved. It's a really cool thing. Who asked that? That's a killer question. Yeah, I love it. Really good. Was there a question somebody else asked? Yeah.
Yeah, but one of my partners asked, what type of string are you using?
Like, what is this string? Yeah. And that was your question, is that right? Yeah, what were you, be more specific, is it like,
Well, our partner was talking about like crocheting and like how strings tangle or fishing line acts differently.
oh, that's cool. That's really good, yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you noticed that, but every time somebody asks a new question, your brain thinks about it more broadly. Also, some of you can't remember if there was somebody in my group that asked a question that I liked because you didn't pay attention enough, maybe. Like, sometimes we're in our own questions so much that we forget to listen to other people's questions. Because that's the most important thing. The only reason I would have you work in a group today is I want you to learn from their perspectives and what they have. Yeah, were there other questions that we had? Yeah.
What happens if you take away a palm?
What happens if you take away a palm? That's a really good one. So if I were to remove the red one or remove the blue one, what would happen? That's a really good question too. So the idea with questions is it allows us to wonder about the phenomena. So if I were to go back to my first slide when I showed you the light bulb, we always start with a phenomena, and then the first thing we always do is we wonder. Like, what do you wonder about the phenomena? And then by wondering, what we do is we better understand it. Let me tell you what I did in the first few years of NGSS that was a mistake, is I rushed this. I would show them a phenomena and just say, what do you think's going on? Or I'd do like a turn and talk. Anybody do those? Like turn and talk, see, think, wonder, tell me what you think. Like, we rush kids too much. And when you do that, they don't have enough time to process it, and their models are always really low-level models. So I always start with the phenomena and then like have them wonder before we develop a model. Now, if you were to ask me to do different things with this, then I wouldn't do those things because those are called investigations. So like an investigation comes later. We'll do that in just a bit. But if I follow my model, it's always phenomena, what do you notice? Then what do you wonder? And then the next thing we do is we construct an explanation. So what I'd love to have you do now, I think we put erasers out on the table. Could you erase your boards? You've shared those already. But what I want you each to do is tell me how you think it works. I want you to draw a model of how you think it works. What is a model? It's your best idea. If you think there's like a magnet in it or a small wizard that incants a spell, if you think there's like some microbits in it, just draw what you think it looks like. Every model's going to be wrong, so just like do your best. Can I borrow? Terry's killing it. Like, this is what a model looks like. You just draw what you can see. Start by drawing what you can see. If your neighbor's talking and trying to tell you what they think, just tell them, be quiet. I'm just trying to draw my model. Do your own model. Perfect. No, you're great. Yeah, come on in. I'm going to give you feedback on models. Make sure you label everything. A lot of you are like drawing different parts, but you didn't put what it is. So if there's like a magnet or a gear or a ratchet or a microbit, just like label it. These are really good models. You all are doing great. I noticed some people are doing this, drawing it when it's apart, which is also a cool idea too. So you could draw it also in an apart position too, like a smaller version of it, and that would show people like, this is what I think happens when he pulls it apart. You could show it together and apart. I think that'd be a cool way. It's okay to put questions on your model too, like, I don't get this part, but I get this part. And then one more thing, sorry to keep jumping into your brain. I'm trying to teach you what a model has. All your models are missing one thing. They're really good, but there should always be a written sentence that explains the model. So if there's no written sentence, then it's not a model. So it could be something like this. The Wonder Tube works because there are gears inside that disconnect. Or the Wonder Tube works because there's a magnet. Or the Wonder Tube works because there's a mouse inside it. But if there's no sentence, then it's not really a model, it's just a diagram. So make sure you have a sentence that really explains your model. Teach your students this, otherwise it'll drive you nuts because you'll try to figure out what they drew and you won't have any idea. So make them write a sentence that explains their model. Class, you're doing so good. Now, at this point, there will always be one student who's got nothing on their board. And you'll freak out, oh no, do I get in there and teach now, or what do I do? This is a move I learned from a 5th grade teacher. It's really good. What I want you to do is, could you, class, cap your pen, and then could you just walk away from your model and look at least 3 other models? It'll just be a quiet gallery walk. I want you to go look at 3 other models. What are we doing? Trying to steal the best ideas that we can. And so let's stand up, walk away from your model, and then bring back any ideas that you find. So cap your pen and walk away. Push your chair in and make it so people don't trip.
No, I didn't hear you say erase. But it's okay, Mom.
As you look at a model, read the sentence before you look at the model. It'll save you a bunch of time. So read what they wrote, then look at the model. And if you like something, then you'll bring it back. All right, I'd head back to your model, and you must have seen at least one other thing that you didn't have on your model that's a good idea. It could be a question they ask, it could be a label, it could be an idea they have. So you have a minute now to just add anything you want to your model. Teachers, if I could give you feedback, I hope you are one of the people who likes to grow. Your models are great. What are you not good at so far? I don't think I ever saw the word of any of the RTCs on your model. So the word cause, the word effect, the word system, a word pattern. So the fact that that didn't end up on your model, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. But it's like a growth area. You could say something like, the cause is this and the effect is this. You've got cause and effect on it. I think that's really good. Or this is the important structure and it leads to this function. Or the whole thing is a system and the most important component in the system is this. So those RTCs will be an area where we all can grow because those are super important. Because they'll allow you to kind of think about any phenomena. But what I wanted to have you do now is at your table group, those people you shared your questions with, what I want you to do is could you share your models with them? But I'm going to give you a task. Let's say this is a table group. Could you share your models with each other? But then I want you to come up with one investigation that you want me to do with the Wonder Tube that could test your model. So as you talk, what's the one experiment you want me to do with the Wonder Tube so we can figure it out? Does that make sense? So share your models with each other, but come up with that one question or that one experiment you want me to do. So talk to each other. Teachers, if I could grab your brains. Thank you. A bunch of people were like, can I try it? Is it only you, or do we get to try it? Yeah. And a lot of the time, the reason I only have one Wonder Tube is well, it's hard to travel with that many Wonder Tubes. But so many teachers are always like, I want science to be hands-on. And I always wonder what they mean when they say that, because I do too. But if you do hands-on right at the beginning, what would the kid do? They just open it up and look inside. So you want it to be hands-on, but in science, it's never hands-on at the beginning. How does science work? I was a scientist for a while, and what you do is you look at a phenomena, you ask a bunch of questions, you come up with a model, and then you design an experiment to test your model. So the only reason we do experiments in science is to test a model. Good luck getting funded to do science unless you have a model that you're going to be my model is I want to play. You don't get funded to do that. And so the reason I'm pushing on a little bit is, like, I would love to let you play, but you have to tell me what you're testing. So remember, you and I had that question, and you were like, can you do it or can I do it? You said you wanted to pull it because you wanted to feel the tension. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, do you want to try that? So let's pull the blue down, and what's that feel like?
I feel resistance.
You want to go with orange, maybe up?
No resistance.
So there's no resistance up and down, but there was, you want to try, I don't want to tell you which ones to do.
Resistance.
Resistance,
No resistance.
no resistance. You can try the diagonal maybe.
Resistance.
No resistance.
Resistance.
No, yeah.
Okay, now I gotta write that down.
So now I got to write it down. So what did we learn from that? Like when you pull here, it's just, I don't know, your words are better than mine. It's harder to pull it across.
Yeah.
But then when I pulled this, it's just, there's nothing.
Right.
It's almost just like, you can just flick it up and down. Yeah.
What determines whether it's going to pull across or whether it's going to pull diagonal?
Yeah, that's a good question too.
Because the ones on top don't seem like they ever connect. Like the blue and red,
Right.
this one don't seem like there's any connection.
Gotcha. Yeah. So what experiments would you have me do? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Is there a noise that it makes when you pull?
Yeah, let's do that. Because I think that's a really good one.
Question was, is there a noise that
Right.
it makes when you pull?
So like, the question is there a noise when you pull it?
Oh, it does sound like it.
If we describe it,
If you describe it, it's like when you have a retractable cord inside.
It
of
does,
like
yeah.
retractable leash. Like it retracts. Yeah.
the ones that when you pull the slides up and you like, is that the one you're doing? You pull, it does sound like the string is.
Yeah, or I was thinking more like the badge where it kind of yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or even
Like this.
it kinda sounds like
Sorry if I strangle you, but it's like this almost, like when you pull it. Yeah. Also, if I name that, what that's called is, what you drew on your board is a conceptual model. What you just described is an analogical model. You're using an analogy to explain how it works. What will kids use all the time? Kinesthetic models when they act it out. But I think from this we know that there's tension across this way, and it also sounds rather like there's a string kind of going out of something or into something. Yeah. What other experiments would you have me do? Yeah, at front of the room. Yeah. What do you?
I want you to separate the two, and so we can look at the length of the string.
I like it.
on both
Yeah.
sides.
So I have to pull. Do you mind? You're reading our puller. Okay. Let's pull this and the green at the same time.
Okay, so yeah, that answers the question.
Gotcha. I don't know if you saw that, but there was, like,
Feel the click.
so there is a, like, I don't know, it just gives, doesn't it? Whoa. Man, you killed the wonder. Yeah, but it is like there's a tug. Yeah, and what's your observation then?
Well, I was going to say, when you're pulling them left and right, they're like that long.
Yeah,
That long, but you're separating them, and they're both that long.
yeah. So like normally there's only one length out. But after I do the tug, then there's two lengths out. It's a really good observation. Yeah. What else do you want to do? What other experiments? Yeah. Yeah, what do you want to, just tell me what you want to do. Oh, yeah. You just can't pull it apart. Yeah.
Oh no, it's so heavy. Yes. So you want to see if there's like additional things.
Yeah. They're wondering if there's like an additional weight. I don't know. How heavy is it? It's.
We were trying to, she said that it doesn't feel completely hollow, so we were trying to figure out.
Yeah, I think you're right. It doesn't feel completely hollow, but it doesn't feel heavy.
Exactly.
It doesn't feel like a metal bar or something like that. Yeah. What other experiments would you like to do? Yeah. I love that. So like, if I turn it this way, does it work? Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, what do you got?
Are we allowed to pull it open and then you pull it?
So like this.
And then
So if I'm trying to not let anybody look. So like in an open position, there is no like, what is it, like cross wonder tube? Yeah. Right. Yeah, so it's like there is this, so there's that, there's an open, and then for everybody who's not noticing it, there's a feeding, right? So I'm turning it, and I'm almost like pushing this up. Yeah.
Can you feed it the other way?
So could I do it the other way? So I could go like this, and then put it together, and could I feed it the other way? Yeah, I think I can. Yeah, it's not as easy. Yeah, it's not as easy, but I can feed it that way. Yeah. Hey, I would always say, like, look at your model. I think you all drew something on your model you're not even talking about. Like, how does it work? Like, how does it disconnect people? What did you say? Magnets, yeah? Right? So how do we test magnets? Just get in metal. Yeah. And I just say that because you had told me a second ago, get a magnet, right? You had said that. Let's just get a magnet and put it on the outside and see if it can hold it. So I got some neodymium magnets. So you want to grab one of those, Alice?
Okay.
And I don't know, where do you want it to be? Like in this position, or you tell me how I should have it?
I was just thinking, I just run it along it and see if I can hear anything click or move in there.
Make him move his hand.
It does stick here. I don't know, Alice, if you're...
Is it right along there? Okay, it does hang there. So something metal's in there probably?
So it doesn't stick here, but it does stick there. In this position. So Alice said, you said, I think there's maybe a metal in it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I said that if you wanted to test if there was a
Yeah.
metal or a magnet,
Oh,
it
yeah,
would
yeah,
be
yeah.
a magnet.
Yeah. So we have evidence that there's either a metal or a magnet in there at this point. And then string, right? Pull the string. I don't know if you all saw that. That was awesome. Oh, I lost it. I got it. That was cool. So where was it? Where did we leave off? Right. So what evidence do we have? We have evidence that there is either a metal or a magnet here. But I don't know if we have evidence that it's a magnet, right? So how can we test that? Metal. Yeah. I've got a paper clip somewhere. Oh, thank you. Yeah. I got a paper clip. Thank you, Alice. And the paper clip sticks there. I know you can't see it in the back, but the paper clip sticks and moves. Yeah. So now we have evidence that there is a magnet here. What else? Tell me what you want me to do. I'll do anything you want except open it. Yeah.
If you grab the green of the lumen and just only hold on to these two pom-poms and let go of that.
Gotcha. You might have to help me on that because my brain just exploded when you described it. Yeah, what do you want to do, Casey?
We'll let go.
What's that?
Let go.
Oh, okay.
See? Yeah.
Whoa, this has never happened before. I don't know. Man. Casey, I have no idea what that shows, but I loved it.
It lets you know that they're connected.
That they're connected.
There has to be some kind of intertwine.
I like it.
Not just fall straight down.
They both didn't fall straight down.
It's like, see how you're pulling them and you can
Yeah.
pull them down, but it's
I wonder if we did this. I wonder if we did, let's try it now. You know what I mean? Because this is the apart position. Let's try
Now it
that.
should just drop.
They should just drop.
Yeah. Yep.
That's cool. All right. Now, if we go back to the title of the talk, what is it? It's about the wonder of science. And the moment I tell you the answer, you don't care anymore. Right? But as long as I don't tell you the answer, then, like, you're in. And also, what I didn't tell you, I never put a learning objective in the front of the room that said, Welcome to class. Today we'll learn about magnets. We're going to learn about magnets and balanced and unbalanced forces. Like, if you have a principal who makes you write a learning objective that has the science in it, they kill the wonder immediately. Like, they know what it's about. But the principal's right. You better put a learning objective in the front of the room. So what do you write? Today, we are going to construct models of systems to understand a physical science phenomena. So when they come in, it should say, today we're developing models to test a system in a physical science phenomena. Because you're saying what are the most important things as we go. Now, one thing weird about this, every time I show this trick to kids, at the end, if I did a workshop like this with students, there will always be a student who just builds it immediately. There's something about kids who, like, when they see it, they're like, I can make one of those. But let me show you the answer.
Thank you.
Yeah. Patsy. Patsy's like, I'm all here for the answers. Like, the answer, like the moment I show it to you, like, you'll have an answer. There's a magnet with a loop and a string. It's almost like nailed it. It's really close to yours.
Some kind of loopy thing.
Yeah, with the loopy thing. And then if we look at the other one, it's the same. So, like, how does it work? If I can put it back together again. So, like, when I move it back and forth, the two magnets are moving back and forth. It's easier with a model. Can you see them connected together and they're moving back and forth? That's why the magnet went back and forth. But then when I pull it, then they go to either side. And then how do I get it back together again? Gravity. And so when I tilt it, if we all listen real carefully, you just hear that connect? Yeah. And now a lot of people are like, yep, I knew it, I had it, I nailed it, I got it. I did, I know. But if you think like this is all about like getting the right answer, it's not about that. But for the last 40 years, that's how we've taught. Like, we give value if you got the right answer or not. And it'll drive kids nuts too. Like, if wonder is here, what's the other side of wonder? Frustration. Like, why did some of you get frustrated? Because I want to play with it. Like, it's almost like when kids are really struggling with it, then putting it in their hands will help as well. But the key thing is it's not about the answer, it's the process. I hope, what did you get? I hope you got better at modeling. Knowing that a model is the best idea you have in your head, out so other people can see it, and it always has a sentence attached to it. I hope you formatively learned that today. What's another thing that I hope you take with you? Like, when you model, generally people in this room are not good at modeling and including the RTCs, including words like cause and effect, or structure and function, or system. So, like, using those explicitly would make all your models way better. And it's a bias that we have that it doesn't allow you to kind of understand it. But I wanted to show you this as an example for like what a phenomena looks like. The thing you'll notice over the next few years in Texas is every time you go to a training on 3D training, what they'll always do is they'll choose a phenomena that is a physical science phenomena. And the reason they do that is it leads to an investigation and an experiment. So it's a hands-on thing and I can answer it. And this is something I struggled with years ago as well. Like, how do I do this in biology?
Thank you.
What's the wonder tube? Or how do I do this in environmental science? And so to show you an example of that, I brought one of those as well. I think, let me see if this works. So this is one, we did this, we were in A-Leaf yesterday, and we did this as a phenomena there as well. And so what you start with is, you start with a phenomena in the world. So you start with a phenomena outside. And so the worst place to find phenomena, especially for biology, astronomy, earth science, geology, is in a classroom. You won't find them there. Like, get outside, take your kids outside. Like right here, I just noticed you have a pond back here, and you have beautiful like bird diversity. But you all wouldn't know that unless we had time to go outside and look. So like you have to get out there and look. But let me show you this. This is from a wild place called Louisiana. I don't know. Anybody's been there? So this is Louisiana, and this is, it's called the Case of the Disappearing Forest. So it'll take a second.
Breathe forward. Go on all in. Oh, that's a big one.
So what's the phenomena? Like, it's a real thing in the real world. It cannot be a simulation. It can't be a PhET simulation. It can't be a clip art. A phenomena has to be a real thing in the real world. Like, the wonder tube exists. This really exists. And as you watch this forest, it was like one day the trees started just disappearing. And if you go there now, there's a big lake. And it's surrounded by cypress forest. And there's just like a lake there, and there's no trees anymore. And so this would be the phenomena. If I'm teaching it, what would I do? Class, T-chart, and we'd write observations on one side. We'd write questions on the other side. What would we do next? Next thing we do is we draw a model of what we think happened to the trees. Just like we did with the wonder tube, but where do the trees go? And develop a model. And then the next thing we do is we plan an investigation. Now, the one thing that really took me a while to figure out is, like, how do we do the experiment? Like, how do we do the investigation? And the way that you do that, let me jump on for a second, is you give kids access to a data set. And so this is called the Case of the Disappearing Forest. But you have them develop models, and then you give them a bunch of evidence. And so this would be more evidence on the incident, what happened with thumbnails according to important things. What's the next bit you look at? It's a Google time lapse of this is what that area looked like over time. So we could kind of look at this at different periods of time, and this is kind of where it's going to show up in a second. I don't know if you saw that. Then what else would I give you? Like, this is called Louisiana, and this is where it is. And this is what it looks like, and the businesses that are surrounding it. So things like Texas Brine, Gator Corner, where you can get the best gator sandwich in Bio Cornet. It's also got links to different things. It's got the rain, it's got earthquakes, it's got like aquifers, it's got information on salt domes, it's got really better pictures, and it's got like a side view of what it looks like. So the idea is that instead of doing the experiments where we set the magnets to it, we just look at the data set. And what they do is they jump from model to an explanation based on the evidence. So when we did this yesterday at A-Leaf, what they did is wrote a CER based on the evidence that's here. And almost all of them rightly said, we blame Texas Brine, which is a company that was hollowing out salt domes, and the salt dome collapsed and the forest went down into it. But the idea is that instead of saying, today I want to teach you a lesson on environmental science, we start with the phenomena. You always explore before you explain. And it's important that you explain. Like, it's still important that with the wonder tube, I talk about what a magnet is and what a force is and what an unbalanced force is. It's important that I talk about a salt dome and environmental science and what that is, but just don't do it first. If you do it first, you kill the wonder in the kids. And by killing the wonder, like, you push them away from the science that we're trying to do. And so to go back to one more thing I wanted to show you before we finish up today is this. Like, science is different than engineering, just as a way to set the stage. I would say probably the most famous scientist right now on the planet is Jennifer Doudna. Jennifer Doudna came up with CRISPR as a way to edit genes. One of the most famous engineers on the planet is Gwen Shotwell. If you don't know her, she's really the one behind SpaceX that's making it work. It's not Elon Musk, it's the engineers that are doing that work. And so what's the difference between those two? The difference between the two is in science what we say is we ask questions about the world and we try to come up with explanations. In engineering what we do is we define problems and then we come up with solutions. Inquiry in science is an incredibly convergent thought process. There's one answer to how the wonder tube works. There's one answer to what happened to that disappearing forest. Engineering is different. Engineering is taking that science knowledge and identifying a human problem and finding an infinite number of solutions to that problem. What's cool about these stories is these two ladies fell in love with science and engineering in different ways. Jennifer Doudna grew up on Hawaii, and she loved being in nature. And being in nature and seeing trees made her fall in love with science. What did Gwen Shotwell do? She went to a women in engineering meeting, and she saw this killer engineer, and she was wearing just super fancy clothes. And she's like, wait, I can be an engineer and wear super fancy clothes, like I'm all in. So like, we never know how we're gonna change students' lives. But I just wanted to say thank you for having me today. I really had a ball, and I'm doing 2 more sessions, but I think I'm done. Adrian, did you want to say anything?